Hi, my name's Mark, one of the pastors here at Trillium. I wonder if you've ever heard of a guy named Seretse Khama. My wife Sally, who's from South Africa, told me a story about Seretse Khama. He was the crown prince of Botswana, born in 1921, educated in South Africa. He went to Oxford in England to study law in 1946. In 1947, he married a young white law clerk named Ruth Williams. And this caused a huge scandal in his home country of Botswana amongst all his tribal leaders. They were enraged that he would marry a white colonial woman. It also caused an outrage in South Africa too, because they just brought in these really tough apartheid laws. And one of the features of these apartheid laws was a ban against interracial marriage. And to have the crown prince of the country just north of them be involved in an interracial marriage was a scandal. And the South African government put real pressure on the British government. And in 1951, the British government exiled Seretse Khama and his wife Ruth from their country, from the country of Botswana. And in that moment, Seretse Khama becomes an exile. He lives in exile from his home. I mean, his home and his heart is back in Botswana. He can no longer live there. And in 1957, he's invited to come back home, but he has to give up, as a condition of his return, his claim to the throne and his royal heritage. And now he's back in the country, but he's now trying to find a way of making a living and surviving in a country in a way that he never imagined. And he's living in a kind of exile as well when he has to deny his very heritage in order to live there, heart and body separated. And it seems to me there's lots of ways to have our bodies and our hearts separated from each other. Sometimes your health can deteriorate to the point where you can't go back home again. I see this all the time with people in my congregation. They're older now and they're too frail to go back home, and they have to give up their home. And their hearts and their bodies are separated. They have to find a way of living in a new place, like a nursing home or in some other facility. You can live in exile with your body and heart separated in your family, sometimes through conflict with siblings or parent-children conflicts. You're living in exile from each other, and your heart and your body has been separated in a way that's not life-giving. You can be in exile economically speaking. You know, you have a great job and the factory closes down and it goes down south or just disappears, and there doesn't seem to be a way to make a comparable income for yourself, and your lifestyle's thrown upside down and you don't know how to cope with this, and your heart and body are separate. And there's almost a myriad of opportunities for us to be in exile in our own lives, to have heart and body separated. We looked at the story of Joseph, Mary, and Jesus fleeing to Egypt. In a sense, they've had to leave their hometown of Bethlehem, and they're living in exile. Their heart is back in Bethlehem, but their body's in Egypt because they're too afraid to go back home. And when Herod dies and his son Archelaus takes over, their first inclination is to try to go back home, back to Bethlehem. But they're warned in a dream that they need to go to Galilee, Nazareth in Galilee. And that's where they go. And for any Jew, a practicing Jew, the idea of living in Galilee is a horrible thought. This is a kind of a dumping ground for people. It's the last place you'd ever want to be. It's a hole in the ground. Bethlehem is right at the center of things. Galilee is right at the edge of things. And it's a crisis for Joseph, Mary, and Jesus. You may find yourself in your own kind of Galilee, wondering if there could be any life there in circumstances where you never imagined, and your heart and your body are separate from each other. And the answer in the scriptures is that there is life in Galilee. And the reason is simple. It's because the Son of God lives in Galilee. That's where the Son of God lives. And in your contingent circumstances, in the difficulties of your life, in your own Galilee, there is life there. There is something good that can come from it because the Son of God, that indomitable spirit within you, is alive there. And there's the possibility of making a new life for yourself in Galilee. Seretse Khama in 1957 comes back to Botswana having renounced his claim to the throne and his royal heritage. He's living in his own Galilee, I suppose. And he struggles to make a way for himself. And then Botswana begins the movement towards independence, and people start coming to him and desiring his leadership. And in 1966, Botswana gains its independence, and he becomes Botswana's first president. He is a ruler of people. He is leading the people, but in a way he never imagined. See, that's the thing about Galilee. There is new life, but in ways that we could never imagine.